evening's Talking Points memo. As you may know, President Obama does not want to cut one government program, not one. And that irresponsible position has brought scorn from me. Here are the facts. Right now, the federal government is spending close to $10 billion a day. This year, it will spend $3.6 trillion. The government is expected to take in $2.7 trillion in taxes. So let's do the math here. 2.7, leaving a deficit this year alone of $900 billion, which will then be added to the nearly $17 trillion debt. Democratic Party doesn't seem to care. And liberal Americans are putting all of us in danger by their inflexibility on the spending issue. Republican Senator Tom Coburn estimates that the feds could save almost $300 billion a year simply by cutting out waste and duplicate programs. Now let's get very specific for you doubters out there. Very specific. Please consider these facts. Am I being nice? The National Institutes of Health recently awarded $1.5 million to a Boston hospital to study why many lesbians are overweight and most gay men are not. The Fed's calling this a significant public health issue. Are you kidding me? Why am I paying for that? Let the overweight lesbians go to Weight Watchers if they want to, like everybody else. Here's another one. NASA will spend close to $1 million researching a, quote, Mars menu, recipes for food that could someday be served on the planet Mars. Here's a bulletin. Whoever allotted that money is already living on Mars. That's insane. I don't want to pay for it. The feds are stealing my tax dollars. Another one, sure. The United States Agency for International Development funding a 4-year project that will improve the economic competitiveness of Morocco. Morocco, the country in North Africa. Key part of this project, training Moroccans to design pottery. The cost to we, the American people, $27 million. Why can't the Moroccan government teach their own people to design pottery? I'll tell you why. Because we'll send them $27 million. That's why. And very little pottery will be designed. The money will likely be stolen. One more? Sure. I have dozens. The National Science Foundation has allocated more than $500,000 to create a video game called Prom Week. This game will give players a chance to relive their high school prom. Why is the National Science Foundation doing this? Quote, because it will give Americans a new and powerful mode of personal expression. Here's my personal expression. This is madness. This is why the federal government under President Obama is totally out of control. Yet the president doesn't want to cut any federal programs. Shameful. And that's a memo. Now for the top story tonight, the return of the now very famous Alan Colmes. Along with him is Barack and a hard place partner, Monica Crowley.
Well, I first want to thank you for doing couples counseling with me.
Couples counseling.
I think it's gone very well.
Yeah, that's a good line, Colmes. All right, now, Colmes. I asked you 7 days ago for specific programs the president would cut. You couldn't give me any because there aren't any.
We disagree again.
Okay.
I did, and Kirsten Powers the next night did a superb job giving line item specific things that are being cut.
There weren't any specific things because according to the Wall Street Journal, and this is correct, he hasn't proposed any spending cuts. In fact, what he's proposed is slowing down the spending, not cutting. And even that is minuscule.
That depends how you define a cut. Now, you talked about NASA, for example.
I don't want to define the cuts. Everybody knows where you're standing. Everybody knows where I'm standing. Okay, NASA, go.
All right, NASA. He is cutting the Mars mission from $587 million to $361 million.
Slowing down the spending, not cutting.
All right, now, we can debate whether or not that's a cut or not. But the the federal spending has risen. Let me just say this. Federal spending has risen under every president. Going back to Eisenhower,
but nowhere near
not true. This is the slowest rate of spending since Eisenhower.
President Obama is the biggest spending president and has spent more money than every other president combined, Washington up to Bush the Younger, second year.
That's not a fair metric. You have to look at the rate of spending increase, which is lower under Obama. Lower than any president since Eisenhower.
That's crazy.
It's
now,
true.
NASA's spending the Mars menu. You're for that, right? You support the Mars menu,
I
correct?
support NASA. Well,
you support the Mars
menu? I
menu?
actually brought you a few dishes from the Mars menu. I thought you'd like
Yes or no?
Yes, and you know why?
Yes.
Because
Okay.
this is because
Holmes wants the Mars menu.
This is preparing for a mission to Mars. And we know that these space missions have created all kinds of jobs and all kinds of inventions.
So you're for the millions being spent
I am for the money
on
being
the Mars
spent
menu.
to go to Mars for a Mars mission that includes feeding our astronauts. Absolutely.
Look, all
No. Reply to this. Reply to him.
I can't. What do you want
No,
me to
yes,
say?
you can.
It's so
Here's
crazy.
Combs.
It's called
He's
space
a
mission.
sincere man.
We should.
He wants to spend millions and millions of dollars on the Mars menu when we're 17 trillion in debt.
The Mars mission.
And this is precisely why we are coming up against $17 trillion in debt. All of the craziness that you just talked about, Bill, and we can add gang tattoo removal in L.A., which we're paying for, a musical about climate change, which we're paying for, robotic squirrels. This is why
I love the robotic squirrels. I'll get into that for a moment.
But it also shows you how far afield we have gotten from what the founders intended of a limited government with limited responsibilities.
Okay, but I don't want to do an ideological thing. I want to do. I'm worried about Combs. All right, I'm worried about him.
Hey,
because he sincerely believes that despite the $17 trillion debt, despite the fact that we're heading to bankruptcy, that we do need a Mars menu to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars.
No, it's not hundreds of million dollars for the menu.
That.
It's hundreds of million dollars for the Mars mission, of which menu is a part.
You can do a Mars mission without the menu.
You got to feed the astronauts.
Okay, we'll get them pizzas to go.
All of this spending is insane, okay? And what it does is it actually limits the government from spending on what we should be spending on.
It's not insane to Alan Combs and Barack Obama.
And this is part of the problem of the far left.
Tell me why it's not insane to Alan Combs and Barack Obama.
Because their whole mission is to grow government in whatever part they possibly can. Absolutely. This is all about expanding government wherever they can.
Wait, let her, then you can retort.
This is about growing government and expanding spending in order to feed that ever-growing government. So it doesn't matter where the growth is coming from.
So your hypothesis is that Combs and Obama, they just want to expand government. They don't really care if they run up a $17 trillion debt. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it comes from a fundamentally ideological point of view, which they believe the government can do what you cannot do, or can do better what you should be doing for yourself. Okay, but we see it on paper.
We see the $17 trillion on paper that we can't possibly pay back, mounting to the tune of $900 billion a year. All right? We see it. Everybody sees it. Yet they still want to fund the Mars menu and robotic squirrels and lesbian overweight studies. See, now, I'm trying to understand, Combs.
Well,
I'm trying to understand.
Right, let me help. I'm not defending robotic squirrels and lesbian overweight
You'll throw
people.
them under the bus, the lesbians and the squirrels?
Yeah, we can do away with that. I'm not suggesting that everything on the Tom Coburn menu. Tom Coburn came up with that list, I think. Senator from Oklahoma. I'm not agreeing with all that stuff.
There's the
shrimp on a treadmill.
That we pay for, too.
I do think that's delectable. That's for dinner later. But the fact is, that's part of the Mars menu, I think. But the fact of the matter is that this is part of a NASA mission which is helpful to America. It is wonderful
so
that
you wouldn't cut this back?
I would not create that. And he's already cut NASA, by the way. That's a federal program that he has cut.
But look, the bigger point here is that when our tax dollars are directed to this kind of insanity, it prevents the government from doing what it's actually supposed to do. Like, there's no reason why we should have such deep and irresponsible cuts in the military. Government is supposed to protect us from enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, now we got to restrain ourselves on that and pull back on that because we're funding
and we can't have the white hat toys for the kids.
Right, and by the way...
And I'm blaming that on the lesbians.
The biggest budget busters, of course, are Medicare,
the deficit
Medicaid, and
is
Social
actually
Security,
not increased under Obama. The debt has, but not the deficit.
I didn't call Combs any names, correct, tonight?